We are closing out what was a very busy week in Washington, and Trump loyalists are feeling the squeeze on multiple fronts. In fact, on Thursday, 5 Republican congressmen who are believed to have critical information about the January 6th riot, including House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, were subpoenaed to appear before the January 6th committee. This is an unprecedented move that was taken by the committee after all 5 previously refused to sit for voluntary interviews. McCarthy, who has criticized efforts to investigate the deadly attack on our Capitol, did not appear ready to comply with the subpoena when he was asked.
My view on the committee has not changed. They're not conducting a legitimate investigation. It seems as though they just want to go after their political opponents.
Now, a reminder that Kevin McCarthy also walked away from the chance to set up a committee on which the GOP would have equal representation. Political reports that Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who did participate in the committee and has been shunned because of it, was among those pushing hardest for the subpoenas. Quote, "The decision is absolutely a necessary one. The sanctity of this body and the continued functioning of our constitutional republic requires that we ensure that there never be an attack like that again." Also on Thursday, the New York Times reported that the Department of Justice has opened a grand jury investigation related to Trump's alleged mishandling of classified documents. Of course, you may remember back in February, it was revealed that Trump had brought 15 boxes of documents home to his Mar-a-Lago estate when he left the White House. The DOJ has reportedly issued a subpoena to the National Archives and Records Administration for those documents. And it is also requesting interviews with people who worked with Trump in the White House towards the end of his term. And if all of that was not enough, earlier in the week, emails were uncovered that had been written by Trump attorney John Eastman back in December of 2020. And those emails urged Republican legislators in Pennsylvania to recount the state's popular vote and to throw out thousands of absentee ballots with the goal of showing Donald Trump with the lead. Joining me now is Joyce Vance, former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, now an NBC News and MSNBC legal analyst and a law professor at the University of Alabama. Joyce, it's great to see you again. Thank you for making time for us. So it's not a surprise that the committee would like to hear from the 5 Republican congressmen that were subpoenaed on Thursday. But since this is an unprecedented move, it does suggest that there is some escalation in the investigation, that they would ask for these individuals so late in the game, so to speak. What do you make of this development?
It is late in the game, but these are material witnesses. And it seems to me that from a strategic point of view, this is a win-win for the Democrats on the committee, because either they get the testimony, I think that that's very unlikely, but sometimes strange things happen, and they get to hear testimony firsthand from the mouths of these key witnesses. But, you know, they've already had the opportunity to learn this information. They've spoken with staffers, hundreds, if not thousands, of witnesses who've come in voluntarily, thousands of pages of documents through these critical periods. And so this gives the committee the opportunity, when it holds its hearing, to tell the American people the story of what happened, and then to say, we tried to get these members of Congress to come in and tell us their side, and they refused to. And that is a very powerful sort of an opportunity. When you think about it in criminal prosecutions, prosecutors can't even comment on a defendant's silence, a failure to make a statement, because that's seen as being so provocative and so suggestive of guilt. And that's really the bind that these members are in. Do they comply and tell the truth, or do they come out looking like they have something to hide?
Do you think that the idea, Joyce, of facing contempt charges will compel any of them to testify, or is this just going to end up in front of the DOJ to consider?
The timing makes it problematic ahead of the election. For one thing, before there could even be a congressional referral process, which takes a little bit of time, we would have to get to the testimony date. These representatives would have to fail to show up and jump through all those hoops that are necessary for obstruction to occur. Then DOJ, which hasn't been quick, even on the easy cases, Steve Bannon, it took more than a minute. These cases, which are more difficult, it's very unlikely that they could be processed and prosecuted, if in fact that's DOJ's decision, in time to make a meaningful difference here.
Speaking of the DOJ, as you mentioned, they have been pretty quiet about where it stands with regards to the January 6th committee. So put that on the side for a moment, because this week there were reports that it convened a grand jury to look into how the Trump administration handled classified documents at the end of his term, which is a whole other issue and raises all kinds of other questions. The question of those 15 boxes and how they ended up at Mar-a-Lago, how big of a deal is it that the DOJ convened a grand jury on that front?
I think that this is interesting for a couple of different reasons. We've known about this situation for a while and known that there was a national security investigation. It's necessary to assess the risks associated with these specific documents and whether they fell into the wrong hands. But set those national security considerations aside for a minute. We now know that DOJ has convened a grand jury, which is the mechanism DOJ uses to investigate criminal conduct. And there's a statutory crime here for DOJ to investigate. That's 18 U.S.C. 1924, makes it illegal to remove classified material or to store it in an unsecure location. And that clearly fits these facts. So now we have DOJ investigating not specific targeted people, I don't think, but simply trying to understand what went on here. How were these documents removed? And the important element, the key element, will be whether the people responsible knew that these were classified documents and nonetheless removed them and sent them down to Mar-a-Lago.
Also, as I was saying in that setup there, Joyce, earlier this week we learned that Trump attorney John Eastman, who's become a central figure in the coup plot, if you will, sent emails to Pennsylvania legislators in an effort to have them throw out legally cast votes so that it would appear that Trump won the election in that state. He said in the emails that if that happened, that it would provide, quote, cover for Trump's team who are trying to help overturn the outcome of the election. Do you see this as a real indictment of John Eastman and Trump loyalists? I mean, in your opinion, is this a smoking gun of sorts, that he actually used the word cover to describe what he was asking the Pennsylvania state legislators to do?
I'm sure he'll have an innocent explanation for why he used the word cover up, but we don't have to abandon our common sense. Look, John Eastman didn't just say the quiet part out loud. He wrote it down. He wrote it down. He wrote the outline, the contours of one of the many steps he was advocating for in this would-be coup. And this is utterly appalling, and I think we've become so numb to the facts here because of the sheer volume of misconduct that occurred. But here we have a lawyer who had the then president's ear suggesting that votes didn't need to be counted properly, that you could just come up with some magic numerical formula and use that to disenfranchise American voters. And we should still have the bandwidth to be shocked by that. The remaining question here, and it's the question that we've all been talking about and struggling towards, is what did Trump know? When did he know it? Did he join a conspiracy or not? Was this people around him engaging in this conduct? Again, this is the sort of inquiry that one suspects DOJ is engaging in quietly and in a stealthy way under a curtain of silence, and that we will one day wake up and learn the answers to what they have learned in their investigation.